We're going to open this meeting. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Menuda.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence.
Thank you and congratulations, Mr. Menuda. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard. Mr. Johnston. Ms. Mineo.
Here.
Mr. Menuda.
Here.
Ms. Brokaw.
Here.
Mr. Strider.
Here.
Mr. Tabano. Mr. Walker. Ms. Ambito.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential in FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, the review of programs and placements of students with disabilities, and collective bargaining under the Tail Law, NTA, CSEA, NASA, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Roll call, please.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Johnston. Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
Mr. Menuda.
Yes.
Ms. Brokaw.
Yes.
Mr. Strider.
Yes.
We will return at 7:02. I'm going to turn this over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. We have two items. I'm going to go in reverse to allow Mr. Bear time to set up for his one thing presentation. Ready? Okay. So we just came back from a 3-day weekend, and I know for some, they certainly appreciate having the extra day, but it's also important to recognize why Veterans Day is vitally important. We have folks in our district and people in our community who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. These are men and women who have courage, who have fought for our freedoms. And so I just want to publicly say that the Newburgh and Large City School District appreciates and values our veterans, those individuals who have served and who have sacrificed in order for us to be able to do what we do every single day on behalf of teachers and 12,000 scholars. So with that said, I'm going to pass it over to our Executive Director of Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bear, who will share with the board what his one thing focus is for the year. Mr. Bear?
Thank you, Dr. Dia. Thank you, Madam President, and Board of Education and senior staff. I'm going to give a short, I promise short, presentation of our one thing. I'm going to go first, and my directors here will also speak. I want to point out the team in the back. I was asked them to come, and they're all here tonight. I don't know if you all met Dr. Campbell, who's the Director of Personal Services, or Jen Holder, who is one of our supervisors of exceptional learners, and Arlene Almodovar. I think you've already met Sasha Silverman and Rob Gowaki. So behind me are Janet and Chris. So I'm just going to go quickly just to give you the backdrop, and then they're going to give you the actual one thing. We did a root cause analysis trying to look at really what our one thing should be. And what we came to recognize in that root cause was the fact that while this will show similar themes, it's really trying to partner with principals. Principals obviously are the ones we need to be able to ensure that we sustain the work we've done. And we recognize we do only special ed, that's primarily our purpose for exceptional learning. They do a lot of things. So really our focus is to really partner with principals on the one thing to help build their capacity to make sure that we enforce the regulations as is prescribed, as well as to ensure that we always promote student learning and achievement in exceptional learning. So with the team know, this is our one thing, and I think we go.
Okay, so this is actually our 3-year goal. We've talked over the last couple of years as we've tried to, as we actually were able to get into compliance, about putting students in the least restrictive environment, meaning they spend at least 80% of their time with their non-disabled peers. Our current rate of 80% or more is 52.9%, so our goal is by June 2018, we will be at 60%. Next slide. So there are three goals that we have this year, three strategic measures. The first one is around reducing the number of referrals to the Committee on Special Education. Referrals come either through the RTI process forwarded by the schools or by parent referrals. In 2016, we had 198 referrals. We want to reduce that by 25% this year to 149. You'll see the different quarterly targets. They aren't uniform because our referral process is not uniform. The summer, the first target of October really reflects most of the stuff that comes out of the end of the school year, the summer referrals, followed by the first quarterly referrals after they get their first report card and so on. So it's not uniform, so our targets each quarter are not uniform. Next slide. So this is a lot of the baseline data that was collected. We had 193 referrals in 2016, as I said before. 46% of those resulted in ineligibility. 5% of those were with parent withdrawals. So we really want to focus on the referrals that come to committee, either through the RTI process or through parent referrals, are actually those that need services. When a child goes through the process, it takes about 35 man-hours for each referral, and that's for a mom or no referral. So we really want those that come to committee to be the ones that really most likely need the services. The state mandates that when you have a parent referral, that the principal meets with the parent either by phone call or in person, to talk about the general education supports within the building and to put a plan together for those supports. This year, as part of our goal, is to meet and build the leadership capacity within the building to understand that referral process and to support them in that endeavor. So we meet with the principals when we get a parent referral, make those phone calls and talk about what supports are in the building. So the goal is to reduce the parent referrals as well as to really monitor the RTI packets that are coming through to ensure that this child is going through the RTI process. Next slide. This is just the baseline data that we're using to compare quarterly the referrals that we get and what the results are in committee. I welcome you to read this later on, but it's really about, this is our own data, what we're going to be looking for, both in the referral process and what happens at committee.
This is some more information regarding the first goal, regarding key actions and more key actions for professional development needs. Our second goal that we wanted to focus on is talking about the least restrictive environment. We are governed by the regulations that say students need to be in the least restrictive environment possible in order to show academic achievement and growth. And they define that as a student with a disability being in a integrated setting 80% or more time with their non-disabled peers. And currently we're at an 82% during the 16-17 school year, and we like to see that number go up to 90%. And you can see, as different with our quarterly targets here, they are uniform because as we go through the initial eligibility process, we want 90% of those students to be placed in an 80% integration rate.
Just to clarify, that's initial referral students, not in general, in the first one for the committee.
You can see at the bottom of the chart that of the 92 students that were found eligible at initial, 82% of those students were in consultant teaching, resource room, or integrated co-teaching, or they're what we call RSOs, related service only students at the initials. What we're trying to do is maintain that number and increase it by 8%. And here's also the baseline data that you're familiar with from the previous slide, just to reiterate our goals. And again, partnering with multiple ways with the principals in educating them on the value of
what we need to do regulatorily, but also being able to provide them with supports and a tiered system, which may consider, may be 8 monthly meetings in collaboration with CNI and technology, as well as invitations for building leaders to attend CSE meetings so they can see it modeled and the conversations that are happening. Our last goal to meet our one thing is that all students, the regulatory language says that all students who are being considered for a more restrictive setting due to behavioral concerns need to have an FBA and a BIP, which is functional behavioral assessment and a behavior intervention plan in place, and it needs to be monitored for a minimum of 8 weeks. Currently, in the 16-17 school year, students who were referred for a more restrictive environment for behavioral concerns was at a 45% rate. We'd like to increase that to 100% rate by June of 2018 this year.
That's pretty much it. Again, it talks about key actions that go along the way, and it's, some of the stuff we already talked about. So, any questions?
So big thank you to the entire Exceptional Learners team for the work that you guys are doing. And so I'll open the floor to questions and comments from the board.
Anybody questions or comments? I have a question about the FBAs. Do we have enough staff in place that can do the FBAs before students are initially evaluated so that you can reach your in other words, is it a doable goal?
That's a big question. We have certainly trained our staff. We brought Henderson School to train them. We're using the same protocols, the same forms. So we're much better in that place. I don't know if I'm ready to answer the question whether we have enough staff. We can always use more. If you're going to ask me honestly, that's the answer.
My second question is, in order to reduce the number of initial referrals, are there plans in place to help classroom teachers and principals understanding the needs of individual students and being able to implement helps along the way? Is that part of your plan?
You're talking about the general ed side?
Yes.
So we're working again in conjunction with Dr. Green and Sarah Felice. There is a RTI handbook that has been rolled out. They started working, I believe, on November 7th with all the RTI chair people to understand really what instruction looks like at each tier of intervention, how to provide individualized support. So the work really needs to start there, but we're definitely partnering with those divisions to make sure those things are done.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Menuda?
I'm just curious as to how many students this actually affects number-wise. We talk percentages and so forth, but how many students are actually affected by this program? Do we know that?
About the FBA process, specific, or what in the one thing you asked?
Total students with disabilities that we serve.
So how many will this impact? Is that what you're asking?
What's the classification?
Our classification is still about 15.8, 15.9. The state hasn't been
How many students is 15.8?
of this.
The entire district, how many? About 1,900 students. Thank you very much.
Ms. Prakash, did you have a question?
No.
Anybody else? Yeah? You sure?
I have a question, but I'm not, I'll look at it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again. Madam President, that concludes my items.
Thank you, Dr. Medina. We're now at the section of the agenda for public discussion and comments on agenda items. Please refer to the regulations regarding discussion and comments that is posted next to the sign-in sheet. We do have some people that are signed up, and the first one is Mr. Collada, and he's going to talk on agenda item 4.1.
Good evening, everyone. My comments are not in support or not in support of development. That's an argument for other boards and other people to decide. I am concerned about the financial implications and the questions that I believe have gone unanswered. This board has historically expressed disappointments with court orders to reduce school tax payments on properties. Tonight, you will be asked to do the same, and probably there'll be some grunts and groans, and you'll go ahead with it. In reaction, the board has paid for legal help to argue against such requests for such tax reduction. It's therefore puzzling why you would be considering giving property owners, in this case the developers of the bridge, property reductions that can affect us knowingly and unknowingly into the future. I have asked, hypothetically speaking, if the current project as proposed were to be completed and the tax abatement proposal accepted today and put in force in this 2018-19 school year, or 17-18, using these formulas of 17-18, what would the net effect be on the district's revenues, including state aid, line items, the cap on tax levy and such? Maybe a better way to ask, what is the difference if the bridge were to be built as proposed, assessed and taxed without any abatements, versus the proposal before you? I have not gotten that answer. And in the response by the developer, not the district, the developer simply said, go to your town assessor and figure it out. I'm surprised the district did not hire its own experts to try and do an assessment of that, since you have been so good at hiring experts in the past for everything from educational to administrative decisions. I did, however, take a look at the New York State School Board Association's website, and they have issued a cautionary statement about pilots. They say in an article of 2014 by the senior research analyst, because these agreements often provide front-loaded tax abatement benefits, they can create tax cap difficulties for school districts. In one extreme case in 2012-13, the Baltimore Spa School District was put in the position, due to the existing pilot agreements, of ending up proposing a budget that called for a tax cut of 0.4%. Therefore, while Boston Spa was actually reducing its tax levy, the district was still required to obtain supermajority voter approval to pass its budget. I don't know if any of you have ever thought about this, but your tax cap formula is dependent upon, in part, pilots. School boards, as the School Board Association goes on to say, should be proactive participants at public hearings. That I give you credit for. However, IDAs should be required to do studies that explore the true cost benefits of such proposals before approval. To date, I have no studies that you have made public that affect this school district. Once again, I still don't know the answer. What would be the difference if they were given permission to build without abatements versus with abatements? Another thing I'd like to finish up with, state aid formulas change with the political winds. In what year have we ever been able to go forward without having to guess as to what the state aid formula would be, even under the best of circumstances? So here you have a 20-year commitment to limit the taxes that this developer would pay. But we don't know what the school formula is going to be each of those 20 years. We don't know how Albany could or could not take this into account. The shifts that in the many variables that create this guesswork are unknown. And committing this district, us taxpayers, to having to support this development, whether it becomes a success or not, into the future, is, I believe, a fiduciary mistake. I think you should not be in the position of helping the developer decide whether they're going to be building warehouses or retail, whether they're going to build or not build. Your job simply should be, are we getting just taxes that the taxpayers deserve?
Thank you. We also have Mr. Day and Mr. Salone also talking on 4.1.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak. We've been in front of the
First off, great day with Waterstone. Obviously, we are the owner and developer of the Ridge, and with me is Neil Sloan, who is an owner and principal of our company. We've been in discussion with the school board through its representatives for several months regarding this proposal. And I just thought this evening we'd just recap and highlight where we are with those discussions. First off, the Ridge is a 700,000 square foot commercial development. It is fully approved and permitted, which in itself is a very rigorous process to go through. And the project is what you would call shovel-ready, ready to go. In order for it to proceed, we've applied for pilot financing through the IDA that effectively allows us to use incremental taxes to finance and offset some of the significant infrastructure costs associated with this development. That is critical for this project to proceed. As you may be aware, this project has been in the planning stages for about a dozen years, unable to get started. That is a reflection of the project. As far as our firm, the question has been asked, are we financially solvent? And the answer is yes. We have a very strong financial position. That was confirmed by Standard & Poor's, which has recently issued us a credit rating of single A, which you're familiar with, is a very high standard to achieve. When we first met with the school board in the spring, the question was asked, is this program good for the school, good for its students, and by extension, good for the town? And so I thought I would address each one of those very briefly. Financially, is it good for the school? Right now, this property generates about $176,000 a year for the benefit of the school, which is about $4.8 million over 20 years with some inflation. Our proposal to the school is to pay $4.25 million up front. That's composed of $3.5 in cash and $750,000 as a grant towards the 1-to-1 computer program. That's almost equivalent to what it would receive as this property currently exists over 20 years. In total, over the 20-year period, the school would receive, it's estimated, close to $19 million. It's a significant financial benefit from where this project stands today. With regard to the students, we've met with the administration. We have met with members and the executive board of the Boys and Girls Club to showcase how this project can interact with students. And through internships, shadow programs, we have the ability to expose students to a fairly broad spectrum of companies and industries. Furthermore, we have proposed various incentives for attendance, and as I said, making a financial contribution to the 1-to-1 program. As far as is this good for the town, the board has heard now twice from the town supervisor, Bill Papadio. This project will not result in an increase in taxes to the town residents, and this project will become the highest revenue generator for the town. In closing, the goal has been through this process to try and create a win-win dynamic. And we hope that the board views it that way and receives this proposal favorably. In response to the questions that were raised, we did, and I actually think the board posted a Q&A. So we did respond to the question that you had asked, number 7. If you look at the answers we submitted. Thank you.
And Roy covered most of it, but I just wanted to get up and say hello and tell you that I think we've gone through a very collaborative process from what we can see and addressed the school board and the town's concerns. And I think if we go forward on this, people will be very proud of what we're going to do there. What is the number of employees? Over 850? Yeah, close to 1,000. Be close to 1,000, over more than that. So close to 1,000 new employees. There's one tenant from downtown that's going to relocate to the project. ShopRite, they actually were going to come tonight and speak in favor, and they had another meeting that they had to go to, unfortunately. But they are downtown. There's something like 70 employees now. They're going to have a lot more new corporate offices.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board on agenda items? If not, we're going to move along. Resolution to approve certain payments in lieu of taxes with the Ridge Hudson Valley LLC project. I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Mr. Johnston?
If I could ask just a framing question about this subject. To be honest, I can't recall the last time I've heard the question of a pilot coming to the board for approval. So I'd just like to understand, why is this pilot special? And why did it require approval by the board and come to us as a question?
Pilot agreements are subject to board approval. This pilot agreement is quote-unquote special, if you wanted to characterize it that way. In terms of the length of time of the pilot, most are 10 years or 15 years. And in this pilot agreement, part of the financing for a prolonged period of time, perhaps as much as 23 years, would involve the reduction in what otherwise might be taxes due the district without the abatement that's implicit in the schedule that has been presented to the board.
Mr. Howard?
Yes, in regards to the pilot payments, has there been any discussions in regards to the securing of the pilot payments? In regards to, in case of default, has there been any written documents that denote that X, Y, Z will happen if this is not met?
We raised the issue with the IDA attorney in terms of what would happen in the event of a default. The response was that what's intended, we haven't received any documentation yet, would be a pilot mortgage agreement that would indicate that the pilot agreement would be discontinued and the property would be placed back on the tax rolls. How much the taxes would be at that point in time would depend upon the status of the improvements on the property at that point in time. We also discussed the issue of enforcement of the pilot agreement. What would happen if we weren't looking to discontinue the pilot by acting upon the mortgage, defaulting the mortgage aspect, but just to collect the amount that would be due you annually? And in that regard, we really don't have specifics yet, whether there would be a recovery of attorney's fees and suing to recover 1 year's pilot payments. And as you know from the schedule, it would escalate from probably around $300,000 and change in the third year or the fourth year, up to a multiple of that as you moved out towards the 20th year. So we really don't have that pinned down. We have statements of intent, but we don't have documents yet about that.
What's the delay? I mean, how come we can't have that document?
That has to be prepared by the IDA attorney. So this is about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I had the conversation with them.
So it's forthcoming?
I don't know. It hasn't been, I haven't received anything in that regard.
Ms. Prakash?
Yes, it's not really a question as much as sort of going along with what Mr. Shaw had said earlier. It concerns me that the 22 or 23 year period of discounted taxes expects too much from the expense of Newburgh and our school district taxpayers. This period exceeds by up to 13 years the typical subsidy period of the 485B real property tax law, financial assistance, or IDA. The pilot agreements that usually come down the pike are 10 to 15 years in duration. This one would far exceed that. That concerns me. And as we've seen in the past with many large corporations or large things, 10, 15 years, 18 years down the line, they'll go to their local town or whatever and ask for a reduction. And that's what we constantly see all the time. Have to give back 4 or 5 years, 6 years. And, you know, middle-class people that most of us are, we don't get reductions. All right? People that want to do small businesses around here that build buildings and build businesses, they don't get this sort of thing. And so this concerns me. And if this corporation is so solvent, then let them build it. Let them build it. But not at the expense of, in my mind, not at the expense of the taxpayers in the district.
Yes, and David.
I would like to clarify one thing. During the entire period of the financing, there would not be an ability to try to reduce the amount of payments in lieu of tax. So in that regard, it's a little different than a property owner who goes every 3rd or 4th year for tax.
So they can wait 23 years and then ask for it.
Arguably, yes, if the property valuation is such that.
My concern is the incentive payment to the district at $3.5 million. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we found out that the town was going to get $3 million. The balance of payment, the tax payment, we should be getting triple what the town is getting. So for me, that's a big concern, that we find out 2 or 3 weeks ago that the town is getting almost exactly the same incentive that we're getting. So my question is, if the town is that important, we, and I'm speaking, you know, selfishly, should be way more important in the scheme of things. And then we hear that the town may get further discounts for policing, etc., and sales taxes will be going to the county. Sorry, Mr. Menuda. But it's not going to trickle down to us in the school district. So my concerns are purely, where are we in the scheme of things when we are expected to vote first, or we're supposed to be the leaders in the amount of taxes that we get in proportion to the town, the county, and that relational situation doesn't seem to apply. So that was my concern. Does anybody else have, does anybody else have questions or comments?
I should.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to clarify something that I answered to Mr. Johnson. With the typical pilot payment, we actually wouldn't have a vote per se, but we would be assured the pro rata amount of payment in lieu of tax that would equal what our pro rata amount of taxation would be. If there would be a distortion of those proportions, then we would be able to vote on it. So I needed to correct that.
Thank you. Mr. Stradone, you have a comment?
I think the process that we've gone through has been thorough. I appreciate all the help from everybody that's involved and all the information that we've been provided. I did obtain a copy of the plans from the town, and I was pretty sure early on they said that there was an outdoor community space for public use. And nowhere on the plans do I see that. I was just wondering maybe if these plans that are at the town were revised after that initial statement, or it's possibly that maybe they haven't got final approval yet. My big concern with the project is that I want it built. I would love to see it built. But the concern I have is when you take the ShopRite from South Plank Road and move it over here, that leaves that mall area 90% empty. If you take the Marshalls from the other shopping center and move it here, that's an anchor store there. All of the places, the PetSmart, all those places are going to come back and ask for a tax reduction. That may be more than the amount that we're getting yearly from this project. So it's not a win-win. It's a win-win for the developer because they get to build what they want. yes, increasing jobs. That's great. I'm happy to see that. But at the expense of what? I think it's too much up in the air for the taxpayers, for the school district to basically take many millions of dollars off the table for future development for a company who's got a great credit rating. They could borrow the money from anybody. If it's such a great deal, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there willing to make them a deal, but not at the hands of the taxpayers or the school district.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? It's time now. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? No. Mr. Johnston?
No.
Ms. Mineo?
No.
Mr. Menuda?
No.
Ms. Prokop?
No.
Mr. Stridiron?
No.
Ms. Ambito?
No.
Thank you. We're going to move on to board committee reports. We're going to skip over the curriculum committee because Mr. Tavana was absent. We're going to go to audit and finance, which happened today. Mr. Menuda. Sure. Do you want me to skip over you and come back?
Yeah.
Okay. Policy committee also happened today, Mr. Stridiron.
Yes, we met today and we discussed a few items in the 5,000, school-sponsored expression, student health services, student substance use of electronic devices, and the opening exercises. And we do plan on having a meeting on December 13th. It's going to be rescheduled.
Thank you, Mr. Stridiron. How about you, Mr. Menuda?
Yes, thank you.
Little technical difficulty here with the computer. So, yes, today at the Finance, Audit and Finance Agenda Committee, we discussed the Cold War Veterans Tax Exemption. I think it's a viable item. It's already been approved through the town of Newburgh and New Windsor for use. We did discuss actually encouraging the city of Newburgh to approve this Cold War exemption as the other municipalities have. In general, we came to a consensus that this is something that's valuable to our veterans, and they did their service, so I think it's a good thing. So anyway, we'd like to move that on for approval. We've looked at the resolution to approve winter athletic transportation and snow removal bids. Those items appeared to be in tolerable levels, and we're also making that recommendation. We spoke with the internal auditor of Cooper Arias today, and we went through a couple of items that we're going to be looking into as far as very specific areas. The state asks us once a year to pick one area. Is that something I can mention here? Yes, so the area that we're going to be looking to is, and Mr. McCoy, correct me if I get this wrong, basically it's the sports programs and the monies that circle in and around there for facilities use. Is that accurate? Thank you. So that's what that's the focus area for this year. Moving on, we have a 485A tax request from the old Regal Bag property. And we looked at that. It conforms with the pro forma 485A or 485B status, and we're making the recommendation to approve that. No heavy lifting there. And we adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. My first item this evening are recommendations from the CSE and CPSE committees.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Ms. Ambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
My next item is a resolution to approve 504 chairpersons.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron? Ms. Ambito? Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Item 6.3 is a resolution to approve an additional CSE chairperson.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Item 6.4 is a resolution to authorize the board president to execute an agreement with Abilities First.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston? Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Mrs. Felice.
Good evening, Madam President. We have several items. The first one being 7.1, the resolution to approve conference requests.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Item 7.2 is the resolution to approve field trip requests.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Item 7.3 is a resolution to authorize the superintendent to purchase instructional supplies and PD from Benchmark Education Company.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston? Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Item 7.4 is the resolution to approve space usage agreements for the Employment Preparation Education Program.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? What is the location of this program? Where is it actually going to happen?
It's at Grace Methodist.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
That answered your question, Drew, before. Okay. Any other questions? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Item 7.5 is the resolution to authorize the superintendent to purchase math and movement materials.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Item 7.6 is the resolution to authorize the superintendent to execute an agreement for Boys and Girls Club Newburgh Performing Arts Academy artists.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Johnston?
Just a general question. Does this account for most of the spending for this particular grant, or is there much other monies in the grant that will be spent in other ways, or is this the majority of it?
There are other funding lines such as supplies and additional materials.
Are there any other questions?
Just a comment. In looking over the programs that will be offered at the Boys and Girls Club, I'm sure that there are positive and good things for the students to be participating in. But I'm just noticing that there isn't anything that really deals with literacy or the core subjects that we deal with. And I know that's one of the things that the 21st century grants can be used for. But it would be nice if the students were helped in ways that would more directly help them improve academically. It's just a thought, and perhaps there are ways to think about that for the future. Thank you.
In addition to the arts programming, there is the project Lead the Way programming, which involves a lot of STEAM activities.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Mr. Schreiber.
I see on the first electives, it says flag football, soccer, they need a gym or fields. So they don't have a place to house this, or are they looking for transportation to our fields? How is that going to work?
Go ahead.
We're looking to contract the individuals so that they can service the students at the schools, Farmville, HOH, and GAMS. So they would have the facilities available.
So they're going to be working in our schools after school?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Item 7.7 is the resolution to authorize the superintendent to execute an agreement with Lukman Muhammad for the Newburgh Chess Club in our schools.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
And item 7.8 is the resolution to authorize the superintendent to execute an agreement with Elant for our clinical CNA students.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito? Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes our CNI items.
Thank you, Mrs. Felice. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Mr. Kern.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 8.1, resolution to approve winter athletic transportation and snow removal bids.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Zambito? Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Item 8.2, resolution to authorize property tax refund for student court order.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
No.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
That concludes the items for finance tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McElmore.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 9.1 on the HR agenda, we have items A through H for your consideration.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Item 9.2 is a resolution to approve substitute administrators.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Item 9.3 is a resolution to approve RISE sub-administrator appointments.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Second.
Questions or discussion? I have a question. How many applicants were there for this position? Seven? Okay. And everyone was given an interview? Okay. I'm just wondering, this program deals with students from the middle level and the high school level, correct?
Yes.
And two of the three administrators are from the high school or middle level. How come all of the people that are substitutes aren't from the high school and middle level?
Because it was open to all administrators within the district, and each of them supervising different areas, and so that was what the posting was. And so those 7 individuals applied.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Menuda? Yes. Ms. Prokop?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yeah.
Item 9.4 is a resolution to approve 21st century after-school program appointments.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Brokaw?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Yes. Mr. Johnston? Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Item 9.5 is a resolution to approve STEAM Academy after-school program appointments.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Brokaw?
Yes.
Item 9.6 is a resolution to approve additional EPI program appointments.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yes, Ms. Brokash.
Yes, where is this taking place?
There are 3 locations, 280 Broadway, 468 Broadway, and 49 Grant Street.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk. Oh, sorry.
So none of these teachers are going to be at the Grace Church? This is something totally separate?
That's a different thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McLemore, would you like to answer that?
Yes. Yes.
Excuse me. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Brokaw?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Item 9.7 is a resolution to approve final exam translator appointment.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Stradiner.
I thought we had a service that translated items for us from English to Spanish, that we pay for.
Yeah, sure.
It's more cost effective to pay the teacher than it is the service for the document translations in this case.
Any other questions or comments? I have a question. This is only for social studies tests. What about science and math or?
If the need is surfaced by those directors, then we will also interview and bring that consideration to the board.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Brokaw?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Item 9.8 is a resolution to create 2 advanced placement testing coordinator stipends.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Brokaw?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Item 9.9 is a resolution to approve stipulation agreement.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Brokaw?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Item 9.10 is a resolution to rescind and approve additional winter coaching appointments.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Brokaw?
Yes.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Mineo?
Yes.
Item 9.11 is a resolution to create 1 FTE facilitator position, APEX.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
Move.
Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Stradiner.
Are we only going to have the facilitator at one school, or do we need more at the other schools?
Right now, we're going to split across Main and North and work out a schedule. We anticipate down the road potentially needing another TOSA, but this is to get us started.
I thought that the Apex was offered during the later parts of the day, during the school day, but maybe I'm wrong. Is this only after school?
No, this is during the day.
So how are they going to have Apex at one school when the facilitator's not there?
Yeah, so that's part of, I mean, that can happen, but in a study hall, but we're going to work out. After today, we'll sit down with the administration and begin to carve out what a schedule could look like, potentially on a rotational basis.
Because you have the writing lab, the math lab at each school. I'm not sure if they have it at West, if they have a lab. Do they have Apex at West?
No, this won't be for during the day at West, this will be for Main and North.
Okay. So I would assume we're going to have at least a few more coming in the next meeting, possibly. Thank you.
Mr. Howard, you have any question?
Yeah, so what determines what building this person will be located in? And how many students do we currently have that will be benefited from the Apex?
So the first part of the question, they'll work in both buildings,
But we have 3.
But for this particular position, we're just saying Main and North, because that's where the bulk of the need is.
So what are we going to do with the students at West?
They need Apex.
I'm missing something. Am I missing something?
No, I mean, you're asking, will there be someone else to support West?
Correct.
And that's why I was saying to Mr. Stridiron's question, that yes, we potentially later may need to come to the board for a second TOSA. As of right now, this is to help get the program started and for us to start collecting some information, some data around the effectiveness of this to support kids during the day. We still have our after school, that will happen at West. We still have Saturday, that will also happen at West. But to get us started, the bulk of seniors, because that's the priority, will be Main and North.
Mr. Johnston, you had your question, and then I'll get to Ms. Perkins.
Yes, is there an explanation for why this position would require New York State certification?
Well, students need to be with a licensed teacher. And so in this case, when students need to take quizzes and exams, it will be monitored by a certified teacher. So are you thinking, why can't it be an aide or something like that?
Yeah, it seems that the role is to monitor and facilitate and deal with some of the more technical items of making sure things work. Seems like a teacher might be sort of overqualified for that position.
Right now, only teachers can facilitate Apex. Yeah.
Ms. Prakash?
Yes, I understand that with this is during the day, correct? That you want to earmark seniors to help them. But West does have seniors, and it has seniors that need to pass regions. To not have something, and we have teachers at that building that have gone through the training, to not allow or not, to say we're going to look at it further down the line. There's regions coming up in January, and I think it's a disservice to those students that are working so hard to who came into that school credit deficient and have worked very hard, and they're taking their exams and will be allowed to graduate come June if they pass these regions. To not have that afforded to them, I think is short-sighted in our district, and I think we should do it sooner than later.
Yeah, I'm going to work with Stacy on something separate for West.
Okay, but sooner than later?
Yeah.
Because, I volunteer down there tutoring. for 3 girls, and they could use something besides me or, you know, in addition. And they're working very hard and want to walk across the Academy Field, and don't want anything to deter that if possible.
Mr. Stradone?
Could we modify this resolution where it says up to 3? And that way it gives you the flexibility to, so you don't have to wait till the next meeting. This second quarter is already begun. The students need to recover first quarter.
Yeah, I appreciate the sentiment, trust me, as someone who believes strongly in what we're doing, specifically at West, because it's new. I would say certainly we should look at 2, but we should look at something separate for West. Because I think we can do some training internally without it costing us a 3rd teacher in order to do that. So just give me the opportunity to work with Stacy on something, and then we'll bring it back to personnel. But for this resolution, if I support what I believe is on the table, and that is the consideration of 2.
Mr. Stradone?
What would be the cost of 1, approximately?
Well,
It's
on
not
average,
a full-time position,
it is.
It's a full-time?
Yeah, so roughly you would look at it as $100,000.
Okay. And we don't have any flexibility in the budget like we have flexibility at other meetings? I mean, I really would prefer to make sure we have coverage to cover the students that have failed the first quarter and want to get a head start so that we don't get into December and January and these students can't recover first quarter.
So let's go with what we have on the table, and I'm going to work with the NTA specifically on something for West. Having the 1-person support Main and North is something that we're going to try to move forward with. If we feel that we have too much need for that, then we'll come back to the board. But I think we can work out something separate for West.
I've never seen the superintendent turn down a position. Honest. Never.
So it's not that I'm turning it down, but we need to go back to the budget, and I don't think we could do that on the spot.
Okay, you guys have questions, I see it in your face. Mr. Menuda?
I want to make sure that I'm understanding this properly, so forgive me. This is a $100,000 position to monitor students. Is that the primary role of this position?
So when you look at, on average, what we pay for a teacher, that's the number we use to kind of look at bennies and look at everything else.
Total comp?
It wouldn't be.
Total comp is 100
on average.
to monitor tests.
No, to monitor the Apex program.
Apex program. Thank you. That's why I wanted clarification. Like I said, excuse me for asking it the way I did.
We certainly could use additional help, but as of right now, what I'm recommending is going forward with the resolution and give us time to kind of go to the budget and do some additional work in addition to working with the MTA.
So could we put this on to look at an additional position after you talk to Stacy for our next personnel meeting, which is tomorrow? Okay, thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Menuda.
Just want to clarify, is this position teacher on special assignment, or is this a flat-out position? Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clark.
Ms. Rokas? Mr. Stritter?
Yeah.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Item 9.12 is a resolution to approve tenure recommendations.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Stritter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Johnston? Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Rokas?
Yes.
Item 9.13 is a resolution to approve after-school review and recovery program appointments at NFA.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, this is the Apex After School, correct?
Yes.
And this is, if I'm reading this correctly, and I want to make sure I'm reading it correctly, this is for NFA Main Campus, NFA North Campus, and NFA West Campus. Yes?
Yes.
Students are not going to be bused from west to north. This is going to be in their building after school. All three campuses. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Stern?
It says Saturdays, so is there busing on Saturdays for, okay.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bogot?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Item 9.14 is for your information only. It's for teaching assistants who will be coming up in the near future for tenure. That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from October 24th, 2017.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo?
Yes.
Mr. Menuda?
Abstain.
Ms. Bogot?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter?
Yes.
Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We're now at the portion of the agenda for public discussion on non-agenda items. Please refer to the procedure sheet next to the sign-in sheet. We have nobody signed up already, but would anybody like to address the board on non-agenda items? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Ms. Beneo? Mr. Menuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bogot?
Yes.
Mr. Strittmatter? Ms. Zambito?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
We